Blamed and shamed for the collapse of BHS, Sir Philip Green is called the unacceptable face of capitalism. On the day 11,000 BHS workers found out they'll lose their jobs next month, Sir Philip is compared to Robert Maxwell as he's condemned by MPs.
It's unacceptable in the first instance that he plundered the firm. It's unacceptable that he ran the firm onto the rocks.
Also, there's lunchtime terror in Germany again. A suicide bomb attack injures 12 but could have killed had the suspect not been stopped from getting into a packed music festival. Terror in America too. At least 2 are dead after a nightclub shooting. And Prince Harry on dealing with his mother's death and how he didn't talk about it for years.
This is the ITV Lunchtime News with Nina Hussain.
Good afternoon. Sir Philip Green was once a darling of British business. Today he was described as much worse than Robert Maxwell. Maxwell was the media giant who stole millions from pension funds. Sir Philip was compared to him today as he was accused of plundering BHS and being ultimately responsible for its downfall. The brutal criticism comes from MPs who investigated the company's collapse in June. Their verdict coincides with news today all remaining BHS stores will close next month. But while his former workforce will lose their jobs, all that Sir Philip might lose is his knighthood. Here's our political correspondent, Libby Vina.
On the way up, Philip Green was never short of friends. Glamorous models happily posed for photos, as well as the most powerful in the land. But today MPs concluded he is the unacceptable face of capitalism, who made a fortune asset-stripping BHS.
This is a real stain on the reputation of business in terms of this extreme greed and leadership failure. I think Philip Green's reputation is in absolute tatters, and good businessmen and women up and down the country will be absolutely disgusted.
It is unacceptable in the first instance that he plundered the firm. It's unacceptable that he ran the firm onto the rocks. It's unacceptable that 11,000 people have lost their jobs. It's unacceptable that 22,000 people are now wondering where their pension is.
His performance before the Work and Pensions Committee last month didn't exactly help his cause.
Could you, sir, do you mind not looking at me like that all the time? It's really disturbing. Sorry? No, you just want to stare at me. It's just uncomfortable, that's all. I wasn't quite...
But it was his fire sale of BHS and its subsequent collapse which ultimately led to the MP's scathing verdict. Of 164 BHS stores across the UK, 20 have already closed, and the rest will do so by the end of August. 11,000 people are set to lose their jobs. More than 20,000 who belong to the pension scheme face significant cuts to their benefits, and the pension fund shortfall is said to be £571 million. Sir Philip told MPs he was prepared to help fix that.
And I want to give an assurance to the 20,000 pensioners, I'm there to sort this.
But the fact that nothing has happened has led MPs to brand him as worse than Robert Maxwell, the newspaper tycoon.
So far, we have no sign whatsoever from Sir Philip Green. Despite all the talk, big boy, I will fix it. There's been no fixing going on. Maxwell, as we know, threw himself off the boat, so was not around to fix it. Sir Philip Green hasn't thrown himself off his yacht, is around and should fix it.
The Prime Minister's spokeswoman said the MP's findings were clearly concerning, but asked whether Sir Philip Green should now be stripped of his knighthood. She said that that was up to another committee of MPs to decide. Outside the BHS flagship store in London's Oxford Street, shoppers felt he should lose the honour.
I think Sir Philip Green should lose his title.
I think he should pay back the money that he's taken from the pension funds. I think it's theft. To be quite honest, I don't know how he can live with himself.
He's left the company for everybody else to pick up all, which I think is good.
And he's sailing about in his yacht. Can't be bad, can it?
Sir Philip, on his yacht, has yet to respond. Libby Vina, ITV News, Westminster.
Our business editor Joel Hill is here. What a difference a report makes. 11,000 people to lose their jobs. What will happen, if anything, to Sir Philip Green?
Well, let's be clear here. Blame for the failure of BHS was spread pretty widely. Dominic Chappell, the owner at the time, was a chancer, manifestly unsuitable to be running the business. He bought it from Sir Philip 12 months ago. But let's be clear here. Full blame laid squarely at Sir Philip Green's feet. MPs accused him of plundering the business, of enriching himself and leaving the company and its pension scheme in such a weakened state that the failure of both became inevitable. He was knighted, remember, in 2006 for services to retail, and that title sits a little uncomfortably for a lot of the people who you've heard from on the street there. But the Honours Forfeiture Committee will ultimately have the say about what happens next, and they tell us that they are looking at the issue. It's being reviewed. Frank Field is clear. He should be able to keep his gong as long as he writes a cheque that fills the hole in the pension scheme. He reckons the cost of doing so, £700 million. That's a jaw-dropping sum of money, even for a billionaire.
Yeah, we heard that shopper there saying that he should pay the money back if you've got a pension with BHS. What are the chances of getting any of that money back?
Well, 22,000 people have. As it stands, Sir Philip Green has said he'll sort it. He hasn't yet. He said that 6 weeks ago. Nothing's been handed over yet. As it stands, you'll have to accept slightly less generous pension benefits because the scheme is ultimately being bailed out by the Pension Protection Fund. However, if Sir Philip Green does come up with a cheque that's sufficiently large, there's every possibility those 22,000 people won't end up materially worse off. The 11,000 people, though, that work for BHS by August the 20th, though, every one of them will be out of work. The redundancy bill will be borne ultimately by the taxpayer. I think this is so scathing and so stinging in terms of the criticism of this report that some form of political response here is inevitable. We haven't had it yet.
OK, John, thank you. 12 people have been seriously injured in a suspected suicide bomb outside a wine bar in the German city of Arnsbach. Detectives said the man, who'd been refused asylum in the country, detonated his device after being refused entry to a music festival. It is the latest of several attacks across Germany. We'll be live with our security editor in Arnsbach in a moment. First, Duncan Goldestani has this report.
Once again, a German city is on high alert after another attack. This was the fourth in what has been a bloody week. Last night, a Syrian man blew himself up outside a restaurant. Police say he had a bomb in his backpack. The 27-year-old had been denied entry to a music festival. Had he been allowed into the crowded event, this would have been far deadlier. We heard a muffled detonation, this man says. We were all petrified. The bomber lived at this shelter. Officials say his application for asylum in Germany had been rejected and he was due to be deported to Bulgaria. A housemate says he always wanted to be the centre of attention.
I think he had some issues because, he told lies so often without any reason.
The attack came on the same day a man used a machete to kill a woman after an argument. He too was a Syrian refugee. Police don't believe it was linked to terrorism. But this has been a violent and deadly week for Germany. Last Monday, an Afghan man slashed passengers on a train in an attack claimed by Islamic State. That, followed by the shootings in Munich, means this is a country where the grief and pain seems unending. Duncan Goldestani, ITV News.
Let's join then our security editor, Rohit Kachu, in Arnsbach. You've just come from a police briefing. What did they say?
Well, they're saying that they're now treating 15 people for injuries and 4 of those people are seriously injured. What they couldn't tell us, though, is what course this investigation is taking after this 27-year-old man detonated his device just beyond the archway here. We got a clue this morning, though, from the Bavarian Interior Minister, who said he suspected that this might have been an act of Islamist terrorism. He has made similar comments before, last week in Munich on Friday, and he was proven to be wrong. But what's clear here is that the focus of this investigation is that deportation order. He received 2 deportation orders within the course of a few months, and the most recent, we now learn this lunchtime, was received on the 13th of July, just 2 weeks before this attack.
This attack is one of 5 in the last week in Germany. Do the authorities there think they are in any way connected?
No, they don't believe they are connected. In fact, these appear to be individual incidents that together, collectively, add to this sense of anxiety, of fear and even of panic during this grim summer for Bavaria specifically. Last week's attack on Friday in Munich, which killed 9 people, was not said to be an act of terrorism. Earlier in the week, an attack on a train by an Afghan refugee using an axe that was claimed by so-called Islamic State, but we will see perhaps later today what indication there is about the motive behind this attack.
Rohit Khatri, thank you. 2 people have been killed and up to 17 more injured in a shooting in Florida. A local hospital says many teenagers are among the injured and the youngest victim is 12 years old. 3 people have been arrested. This report from Sally Biddulph contains flashing images from the start.
The aftermath of another mass shooting in the United States. Police gathering evidence and stunned people trying to find those they love. This time it was Fort Myers in Florida. The target, the car park of a nightclub hosting a party for teenagers, striking when parents came to collect them. Many of the victims are children, the youngest aged just 12, the eldest an adult of 27. Among them, Timothy Settles, who posted these pictures of himself in hospital, writing on Facebook, "I don't want to die." Police have confirmed 2 people have been killed and as many as 17 are injured. 3 are in intensive care. This lady saw it happen from across the street and hid in her car for safety.
We were sitting in the car because they were shooting. I'm like thinking, okay, they not finna get no closer when they shooting. Next thing I know, we sitting in the car, and every like 5 people just running, still shooting.
Police say they've arrested 3 people and are trying to establish a motive. It comes a month after another mass shooting targeted a gay nightclub in Orlando, killing 50 people. Both events shocking, yet depressingly familiar. Sally Biddulph, ITV News.
Here, a man's died in Surrey after a suspected shooting at a party. The man, who was in his 30s, has not been identified. Several others suffered serious injuries in the incident in the early hours of this morning. A murder investigation is now underway. And delays for motorists travelling to Dover have eased slightly today, but police warn there could be significant delays for weeks to come. It follows a weekend of gridlock for motorists because of extra French security checks at the port after recent terror attacks. Theresa May has made it clear she doesn't want to see a return to border controls in Northern Ireland as she visited for the first time as Prime Minister. She spent the morning at Stormont Castle in talks with the First Minister Arlene Foster and the Deputy First Minister Martin McGuinness. Our reporter Tracy McGee joins us live from Stormont. Now, the Prime Minister trying to put fears over the border, about the border, to rest.
That's right, Nina. Theresa May knew coming to Belfast today she was walking into a house divided. That's because the Unionist First Minister Arlene Foster supports leaving the EU, but the Nationalist Deputy First Minister Martin McGuinness is very firmly against it. The one area they do agree on, however, is the border. Northern Ireland, of course, unique because it shares a land border with an EU member, the Irish Republic, and there's a great deal of concern that we could see a return to the so-called hard border, checkpoints and barbed wire. But Theresa May was keen to reassure people that's not what she wants.
We've had a common travel area between the United Kingdom and the Republic of Ireland many years before either country was a member of the European Union. Nobody wants to return to the borders of the past. What we do want to do is to find a way through this that is going to work, deliver a practical solution for everybody.
And Tracy, how did the politicians there react to what Theresa May had to say?
Well, very tellingly, Arlene Foster and Martin McGuinness held separate press conferences afterwards, and the differences were plain for all to see.
There is no good news.
whatsoever in Brexit for anybody in the north. In fact, it's all bad news.
We have the decision. Others will have to explain why they seek to want to overturn that decision.
Well, the talking may have finished here in Belfast, but the conversation continues. Theresa May set to meet the Irish Prime Minister Enda Kenny tomorrow in London.
Tracy McGee, Stormont, thank you. Scotland's First Minister, Nicola Sturgeon, has said that she will protect Scotland's relationship with the European Union. She outlined the measures she would take to ensure a special status for the country and said she was committed to exploring other options in addition to a second independence referendum.
The outlook for the UK is uncertainty, upheaval and unpredictability. In these circumstances, it may well be that the option that offers us the greatest certainty, stability and the maximum control over our own destiny is that of independence.
Prince Harry said he regrets not opening up earlier about the death of his mother, Princess Diana. He spoke about his experiences as he hosted an event at Kensington Palace for the mental health charity Heads Together. Its purpose was to highlight how it's not a sign of weakness to talk about mental health issues, and he was joined by several sports stars who've suffered psychological problems themselves. Harry told Rio Ferdinand, whose wife died last year, how he recently used his own experience to help a man whose children were coming to terms with the death of their mother.
He just said, look, I just literally want them to meet you, because they've started asking questions going, what's going to happen to us when we get older? We haven't got a mum. And I literally, we didn't even talk about it, we just sat down and had a laugh. And he just said to me, he goes, look, you know, there you go. There's a classic example of someone who, you know, has managed to... He's normal. He's normal, exactly. And that's all they want to know is, okay, fine, I'm not going to be like, you know, whatever it is, that fear of the unknown, I got it, you know, for the first 28 years of my life. Never talked about it.
For Reaction, I'm joined by Andy Langford from the bereavement charity Cruise. Thank you very much for coming in. I can't think of a more high-profile death of a parent than Princess Diana. Everyone's thoughts in that tragic time were with those boys. And today, some real insight from Prince Harry, how he did and didn't cope with it.
It can be very difficult for people to cope with bereavement, and particularly at such a young age. Often it's difficult for children and adults to find the words to express how they feel.
How is it that some adults and some children find it really comforting from the beginning to talk to lots of people or to talk to one person about what they're going through, while others simply don't want to talk to anybody at all for years sometimes?
Each bereavement, each loss is different for each person at each different time. And what we commonly find in the services we offer and in the people we support, the common question is often, am I alone? Am I going mad? Am I crazy? Is there anyone else who will listen or understand out there? And of course, lots of people will. And it's vital for people really to try and talk with their friends and their family, including children.
Obviously, everyone goes through the grieving process differently, and that must be the same with children as well as adults. But how do you begin that conversation when somebody has lost the person through illness or through being in a war zone, who's lost the person that is meant to protect them in the world?
Often, for people who are trying to support someone who's experienced such a loss, it can be difficult to find the words to say. Often people want to make someone feel better by what they say. But generally, what we find, it's a very human thing, is that often there aren't the right words to say to make things better. But the one thing we can do is to be available to people, and that's children and adults. But then also we can be available to listen. And often that is one of the single best things we can do.
And very briefly, it must be very similar in terms of impact if you lose a sibling as a child as well as potentially a parent.
Absolutely. And particularly in the loss of a sibling, that'll be someone you'll probably expect to go throughout your life with in whatever form. But of course then, if that person is no longer around, it can bring on all sorts of feelings, all sorts of loss.
OK, Andy Langford, thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
And finally, after Chris Froome's success at the Tour de France this weekend, what a boost for British cyclists ahead of Rio. Froome secured his third Tour victory yesterday, riding into Paris with his teammates wearing the coveted yellow jersey. Now he and his fellow GB riders have their sights set on chasing gold at the Olympics. Our sports correspondent Ian Payne has been to see how the preparations are going.
Yes, well, Chris Froome's victory in Paris yesterday has certainly left the Great Britain squad in good spirits. I've been with them all morning. They're looking forward to Rio. Froome himself will be part of the road race team, as will Adam Yates, who did so well in the Tour de France, and Mark Cavendish, the specialist sprinter, well, he'll be taking part on the velodrome on the track once again, as will Laura Trott. We've been watching her in action today. She went through a very strenuous spinning session, is how I would describe it. And she's in good spirits. She won 2 gold medals at London in 2012. We caught up with her in her training camp in Spain and asked her what she felt about her chances.
For me, I want to target 2 gold medals. I also think after London, I became this kind of inspiration to young girls. And for me, it's about building on that.
Well, Great Britain will also be represented in Rio by Bradley Wiggins, another winner of the Tour de France. He'll be back on the track. But it's the man that you can see in this picture alongside him, Shane Sutton, who's been making all the headlines for British cycling this year. He was suspended as a coach of the British team after allegations of discrimination, allegations which he strenuously denied. It's about the only black spot on what's been a wonderful time for British cycling, and the big question is, can they emulate or even go better than the success they had at London 2012 when they won 8 golds, 2 silver and 2 bronze. It's going to be quite a challenge.
Ian Payne there. The New England boss, Sam Allardyce, is adamant he's the right man for the job and says he will be the one to turn things around. In his first news conference as the new boss, he says man management was one of his assets.
I think the bonding of the team is exceptionally important while we're all together, trying to create a good team spirit and have some fun. You know, the game of football is to be enjoyed, and I've enjoyed my life in the game for many, many years now. So, as the pinnacle of my career, which this job is, I want to enjoy this the most. So I can only do that with everybody that works for me and works around me.
That's it this lunchtime. Mary Nightingale and Mark Austin will be here with the ITV Evening News. From me and everyone here for now, bye-bye.